So you're saying this was one of the first Trivium songs you heard?
It was, yeah. We got the album off Paul Ryan, and yeah, we put it on. We had the intro, and obviously Rain was the first song that we'd heard of you guys.
Damn.
And it's the one song that has since then stuck in my head as my favorite Trivium song.
Oh, damn. Thank you so much.
Man.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah. So who came up with that riff?
I thought, it was hilariously, because when you mentioned that, I thought it was me, and I asked Corey to double check, because Corey's memory is better than mine. It was a Corey riff, actually. Okay. So with Ascendancy, it was tough. Riff to riff, it was a different guy for each one. So what made me realize even more, oh yeah, that does make sense to Corey riff. Corey usually writes in that kind of like Phrygian thing, like where I normally write in patterns of more like melodic minor, and he writes more in Phrygian and more, it sounds kind of like Egyptian to me, a lot of his riffs, like Damocles, things like that. I love the picking pattern because it's a little bit different than doing straight down, up, down, up. I've always felt that it's one of the most perfect openers. But there are some tours that we've done where it's like too heavy for an opener, and we've had to like dial it around. But the Trivium ones, it's always been well. Feels so aggressive with that dun, dun, versus just being either way. That's all just from 5, 6, 3, 5, and we have a couple harmonies here and there.
Yeah, it's a killer.
Yeah, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, it's a timeless one, you know, and it's that aggression of it as well, because of the stabs with the drums. And is there octaves with that as well as a backup? There
are. So Corey does the harmony where I'm going. But I'd love to try it together if you're down.
We can give it a go.
So it's a 5, 6, 3. So the first hit, after the first hit, dap-bum, ba-da-dum. And then I come with that little DJ hand.
Yeah, it's a sick riff, man. That's money.
Hell yeah. Okay.
That's suffocating.
That's awesome. This has always been, whenever I think of Bullet for My Valentine, that's the riff that comes to my head every single time. I love that you guys, when everyone else was going to pedal tones lower and lower, like drop D or drop B, drop C, you guys went to A. What were you thinking with this riff?
I don't think we were thinking much, to be honest. Back when we were writing that album, when we went in to record it, we'd only pretty much written about half of it. So whilst we were making it in Lincolnshire, we were scrambling just to make more songs because we were making an album, even though we didn't have an album, you know? So I was just one a late night kind of drinking session and riffing, and yeah, it just popped out. And yeah, I think we had a lot of stuff which was kind of open chugging and that kind of stuff. We just wanted something which was a bit more kind of pokey. Yeah. And then just something that would jump out the speakers a little bit more. We want a bit of an old school feel to it. And yeah, it's just one of those things that, you know, it's like, it just comes out.
I feel like it lifts to so much being on that higher fret. And a lot of times if I write something like that's like a higher fret thing, instead of being down, people are like, oh yeah, that reminds me of Bullet. As soon as it's higher, which is so cool that you kind of occupied that space. So show me that riff so I can finally do it right.
That's it. So it always just kind of occupies that kind of those 3 frets, you know?
Awesome. Oh, slide down?
Yep. That's it.
And I love that chord too. That
yeah, that's kind of that chord there is kind of a magic chord for us. That's in a lot of Bullet songs. You know, like it's in it's obviously the main chorus in Tears. It's in Suffocating, and we've kind of not milked it, but that's kind of a chord we go to when we want to put Bullet DNA in something. It's kind of weird. No, it's just something we always go to. You know? It's just a pretty chord, you know, and it's so versatile as well because it could be major, it could be minor. You get so much money out of it.
That's awesome. I feel like both of those things are so iconically Bullet, and I do hear that, which is really cool.
Yeah, we've always, you know, we've kind of tried to make that ours, you know. So
that's very cool.
It's good you're picking up on that.
Yeah, man. And I feel like we kind of do a little bit of those too. Like I physically can't play a minor chord very well, a minor bar chord. So I've always just lifted this. Instead of being here, 'cause it sounds like the chord's missing, I would always just lift here. That's why like this is in Blinding Tears, like Late to the Flies. Instead of having this, I've always just lifted it. So I feel like that's the same for you guys here, which is really cool.
Yeah, you just kind of get so much bang for your buck.
Yeah,
something like that.
absolutely. Yeah. Very cool. Whenever I think a Bullet and Trivium, there's two songs that everyone thinks of, and Dying is one of them for Trivium, and it's always been a fun, easy song. It's a different key than we normally write in. I think this is one of the few songs that actually sits in this B key versus being in D. The rest of the record's pretty much in D minor. Nice, simple, easy, and one of the biggest sing-alongs. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. Just a lot of space for other stuff to be built on top, especially vocals and stuff, which is obviously a very important thing in a song. So,
definitely, yeah.
Man.
Yeah, heck
yeah. Well, our equivalent is obviously Tears, and it kind of the main kind of chorus section goes back to that kind of Bullet chord that we just talked about. And
that's awesome.
It's so simple, I mean,
no, I love
all about the vocals on that songs for us, So
I love when both of our bands, even though both of us have always written for two guitars, that a rhythm guitar will still be that melodic. I think that's always what makes it so fun.
Yeah.
That will transform what you think a rhythm guitar part should be, and go into things like that. Reminds me of Departure. Are Drawn and Torn Asunder. I think it's such a cool thing.
It's just adding melody to chords, It's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
Why not? Yeah.
I do want to talk about that bridge for Tears. Like, what did you? Because it is really interesting because it completely shifts and it feels like a different song, but it works so well.
Yeah.
What were you thinking when you did that?
Honestly, I don't know because it's madness. Really, it's a song that really doesn't make sense as a structure. And the tempo's all over the place. It just kind of stops and starts that bridge. It's just bizarre.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just think we were, at the time, we weren't really thinking. We were just kind of fearless and experimental and brave when it comes to the songwriting. So we just thought, why not just stop and just go off somewhere? Just take it somewhere else, It's bizarre. Yeah. There's no reason why the song should have done that, especially with the 3 minutes before it, wherever it is.
It's so cool.
It makes no sense.
I've known the song for 19 years, but when I was restudying it to sing with you guys, I would get the bridge, and I'd be like, wait, this doesn't make sense. How does this work? But it works so well.
Yeah.
And it's so cool.
It's just one of those moments, I think it was just being young and fearless when it comes to songwriting, and things that shouldn't work, we didn't really care. On paper, it shouldn't work. We didn't really care.
Yeah.
We were just doing things that was exciting, trying to catch people's attention. And we felt that the song at that point was so kind of ballady that we needed to give it an injection of pace, And
what's so cool,
that's all it was.
Yeah, because if that song existed today from a different band that wrote something like that, it would be like a breakdown section, but instead you made a thrash section, which I think makes it so fun.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, on paper it shouldn't work, but it's done great things for us. So.
Yeah, absolutely. When we first wrote Gunshot, we thought we were actually playing a synced rhythm. We're like, hey, let's do something like Fear Factory would have done. Let's lock up the rhythm guitars and the kick drums exactly. And it was Corey, myself, and Travis in this like $35 a night motel on the Vegas Strip, like way outside, because that's all we could afford at the time. And we were convinced that the kick drums were locking in perfectly with the guitar, but we were so out of our minds for a specific reason that the parts don't go together, because the drums are going, the guitars are going, and we were convinced in our head that it was locked in, and it wasn't. I think that's what made that interesting.
Yeah.
It's something we just didn't think through.
Yeah, but that's those magic moments happen, And it's just something that shouldn't work on paper just does in reality, you know.
Yeah, and I wonder if it's like the less we knew when we were younger.
I think that's a huge
We knew
factor.
less about key, less about tuning, didn't think about it, just went.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's that kind of young and fearless, you know.
Absolutely.
You know, you think you're just going with the ears, and I think that's how you should always approach it, anyways. You know, listen to your ears first, rather than what should work on paper.
Definitely. There were so many moments, I'm sure, if we went back and looked at, oh, does this guitar melody, because we love having like open chords, like Flies, for example. The guitar melody is actually going. I'm sure there's parts that shouldn't work with that guitar melody, that rhythm guitar part, and the vocals, but we just didn't know or didn't care, and I think that's what made it good.
Exactly. That's how you should approach it forever as well.
Yeah.
You know, the more you think about stuff like that, the more it can impede creativity, you know, so I think you just got to go with it. And if it feels good and sounds good, then it's good.
I'm into that.
Yeah, man.
We were talking about signature moments, and this ended up becoming a signature moment for us later on, like a couple years later. We did this on Ascendancy inadvertently, that ended up becoming a thing for In Waves and future records. But Gunshot, typically, like when you have a riff and you want to harmonize it, you'd go up 3 steps to like. Instead, what we did is we took a lower third, and so Corey's part live. It ends up making these really fun chords that we would use later on for songs like Skyline Severance or things like that. And it's cool to think about these signature moves, these signature things, signature chords. You said that bullet chord here. And it's very cool. Like I love that. I love that there are these simple riffs that even though there's only so many notes and so many bands have done these things, that people only really think of bullet when you hear any kind of Pendleton riff on A, which I think it's a fun thing.
Yeah. Okay, so Voice Resides, opening track on The Poison. That was actually a Paggy riff, and he's not here today because he missed his flight. But yeah, and it's one of those, it's very simple, has a little harmony on it. Yeah, and it just kind of set the tone for the vibe, you know, for the record. You know, really simple stuff. You know, back then as well, we didn't really overcomplicate anything, you know, we just kept riffs really simple. You know, we've never really been a super technical kind of guitar duo. We've just done things kind of hard, direct, and we've always tried to approach it to make them catchy rather than technical. That's kind of what Bullet's always been about. It's been simplicity. Yeah, and it's just, you know, it's one of those simple riffs. And I think it's just, again, 20 years later, it stood the test of time, you know what I mean? It's back in the day as well, when we'd open with that, place would just go off, you know what I mean? Just a simple riff, simple groove, heavy vocal.
It sounds so aggressive, and I think the down picking is because instead of doing single note, you're doing like all 3 notes.
Yeah.
It sounds like extra aggressive, which is really cool.
The single note thing is something that kind of we've adopted as the years have gone on for some reason, but back then it was all about kind of the full 3-string.
Yeah, just hearing that, I was like, wow, that sounds like super aggressive.
Yeah, it is super aggressive, and it's all about that kind of downstroke as well, not alternating, you know, all about the downstrokes and digging in deep, making it sound super aggressive. You know, so it's something we've always kind of done, is kept things simple, but do it well. You know, and it's served us well.
Definitely, absolutely. With Flies, that was really interesting writing because it was all of us in this place called Fairview Mini Storage, this terrible storage place on Fairbanks Avenue, like that I was like 16 or so, and it was Corey, myself, Travis, and I don't remember, it was just 3 of us at the time. And that's one where Corey came up with that riff, and after he came up with one riff, we kept passing back and forth, like passing the ball back and forth immediately, like in real time as we're standing there. And that was a track where I started singing gibberish on the mic. Later on, finding out from producers later, that's the way you actually write vocals. Like, oh yeah, you just don't think about words and write gibberish. And so it's all these things that we would be doing later on in the future, all at that moment. And I think it's so interesting too, because with Flies, I got I actually was confused. Did I write that? I had to ask Corey because all three of us, Paulo, Corey, myself, we all have distinctive writing styles that will all sometimes mask as the other. Like sometimes I'll write something that sounds like it could have been a Paulo riff or a Corey riff and vice versa. And it's interesting because this kind of riff was pretty prevalent after like At the Gates and the Gothenburg sound and like metalcore bands started playing it. But now I feel like those riffs are almost going away, which is interesting. So it's nice to hear Trivium and Bullet still sounds so good playing those riffs from like 19, 20 years ago.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
For me, with pedal tone style riffs that would be sitting in this kind of place, it was bands like Early in Flames, At the Gates, Dark Tranquillity. I loved what they were doing melodically, but then I started getting a metalcore. Like the German metalcore scene was the first style I got into with Heaven Shall Burn, Caliban, then things like Poison the Well. There were some metalcore bands that would be doing riffs like that, but I feel like they were kind of doing like Down Up, not Darkest Hour, but other bands like that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to hear what it sounded like faster and mixing the melody and the rhythm into one part. So it was like Swedish melodic death metal scene and like American and German metalcore scenes that made me do the pedal tone stuff.
Yeah.
Where did you guys start feeling those things?
I think for us, well, for me personally, there were two bands that kind of molded the shape and the sound of my playing style and the sound of Bullet, and that was Metallica and Machine Head.
Awesome.
Yeah, so Burn My Eyes and the Black Album were two of the first albums that I'd ever really bought with my own money, and they kind of sent me on my way to learning to play guitar and getting into metal, you know? Wow. So Metallica was more of the kind of faster, thrashier, alternate picking stuff, because I started with Black Album, went all the way down to Kill 'Em All. And then Machine Head was the influence for the down tuning, the working with Colin Richardson, the chugging, that kind of stuff. So I think those two bands for me were massively influential to molding me as a guitar player, as a musician, and for Bullet stylistically, even though we don't sound anything like either of those bands, I don't think. I think if you dissect it and you go back, then they're definitely there.
That's really cool.
Yeah. I think Burn My Eyes for me is probably the best debut metal album of all time.
Yeah, it's a very, very good one.
You know,
Machine Head was actually the first metal band I ever saw live.
Really?
Yeah, when I was 12. Yeah, You're the Dragon Tour, but it was Burning Red.
Yeah.
So, and I did the same thing with Metallica. Like you said, I got into Black Album first, but then I went forward. Then I went Load, Reload, S&M Garage Days, and then backwards.
Okay.
So by the time I got to Kill 'Em All, I was like, is this the same band? And now I obviously love the record.
Yeah. No, that band have been on a journey.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I think having, those two bands as the main influence for my playing and my songwriting and stuff, I think it's a great combo. They're both very different, but have contributed so much to Bullet,
Mm-hmm. Very cool. You and I have talked on it before, but when we first did all of Ascendancy, we recorded with my old Les Paul, and we're supposed to be in drop D flat, what we're in now live. And I remember coming to the studio one day after we just finished all the rhythm guitars, all the melody guitars, and Jason's just at the console, like holding himself like this. I don't know if he was crying or not, but on the verge of tears. So Jason, what's wrong? He's like, the entire record's out of tune. I'm like, what are you talking about? I was like, no, it's not. So I listened back and I was listening to like, it all sounded like, it's kind of hard to do that with an Evertune. It was all like slightly wavering every octave. I'm like, oh man, did we not intonate when we tuned it down? What the heck happened? So we ended up having to use this guitar that this guy at Guitar Center built. We can't find the guy anymore. We can't find the guitar, but he built this guitar, let us borrow it, recorded all the rhythms over again in a higher step up. So back to drop D standard. Then it worked out.
Gotcha.
So that was a nightmare.
So you didn't notice when you were tracking?
I guess not. Man, I guess we were too green or something. Yeah, it wasn't horrible, but when he played out the soloed octave chords, we're like, oh shoot, that's horrible.
Yeah, guitar tuning in the studio is the biggest buzzkill ever, and it takes up so much time, it drains so much energy that if you get it wrong, you can just be like chasing your tail for 3-4 hours just trying to get one octave chord in tune, So that's why these things
lifesaver.
have become a lifesaver in the studio over the last few years.
When we did a record with Colin, we did in waves. They would actually have me play for like 5 to 15 seconds of music, stop, tune, 5 to 15 seconds of music, stop, tune. And that's when I heard about these, I was like, oh, we're switching.
Yeah, it's no way to record an album. It's so draining.
Yeah.
So what albums did you use Colin for then?
Colin, he mixed Shogun. Yeah. Crusade, Shogun. He produced, engineered, mixed in waves with Carl and Ginge. And then Colin also mixed Vengeance Falls. And that was quite a few.
Like our bands have a lot in common.
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
Like the timing, the forgive the pun, Ascendancy.
Yeah.
The people we've worked with, everything aligns, man.
Yeah,
It's
without
really
even
bizarre.
ever like us talking about it.
Yeah, it's
which
so
is-
weird. It's so weird that everything is so in sync. It's really cool.
Yeah, and it took 20 years for us to go, hey, let's tour together.
Yeah.
A proper one.
I know, but you know, good things come to those who wait. And I think
Definitely.
it's all about timing, you know.
Definitely.
I think that now it just makes sense. And again, I think because of it's the debut albums as well. That's even more special than doing an anniversary tour of a certain record. I mean, that's cool if you're a fan of a band, but I think doing it together and then having both debut albums, it's just everything is in sync. It's weird.
Absolutely.
It's weird, but very, very cool. So,
Yeah. That's awesome.
yeah, man.
Any strange anecdote from Poison? Any weird curse like that, or not necessarily?
Yeah, not cursed, but we did things a certain way because our label wanted us to try something. So we started making the Poison with Colin. We recorded it in Chapel Studios in Lincolnshire. And we were about 4 or 5 songs deep, and the label wanted us to record Tears Don't Fall and another song that were going to be singles with a big name producer.
Interesting.
So we were like, okay, you know, we'll do what, you know, we'll just try it. So basically we got halfway through the album and we got jetted off to Canada to work with Gigi Garth.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, who's done Rage Against the Machine, a bunch of really cool shit, you know, a great guy, great producer, done massive albums. And we spent like about a month in Vancouver doing Tears Don't Fall and a couple of other songs that were going to be singles. And we came back and started again with Colin.
Really?
Unfortunately, yeah, it was just one of those things where, you know, 1 and 1 didn't make 2 at all, you know, and we just didn't gel as people. I don't think he understood who we were as a band and what we wanted to achieve sonically and all that stuff. And yeah, and it was quite demoralizing. You know, we just spent a month in Canada, spent a ton of money, got really excited about doing it, and we came back and the results just unfortunately weren't for us. So we just had to start again. So it wasn't the end of the world, but it was quite an early learning experience of sometimes you got to stick to your guns and do what you feel is the right thing to do with your art.
Definitely.
Not what a label or a manager or someone third party thinks is going to be right for you, you know? So it was still a cool experience. But yeah, it was a lot of money wasted, a lot of time wasted, and it took a lot of wind out the sails because we were flying with Colin and having such a good time and recording our debut album. You know, it was a huge, huge experience and a huge part of our lives at that point. It was the most exciting time in our life. And we felt it kind of took the energy out of the sessions, but you know, we went back and Colin picked us up and we carried on and everything was fine. But
That's amazing.
so it was all good in the end. But yeah, that was kind of a little speed bump on the Poison journey, you know?
I wish we learned that early like you guys did, because we had that happen like record 7. Like where we
Right.
worked with a producer that the label's like, hey, this is the right guy for it. Didn't understand the history of the band or where we were going with it. I had just thought I'd never scream ever again in my entire life. And just the entire recording process was negative.
Yeah, it's one of those weird ones where, you know, the name sometimes doesn't really kind of make a difference if it's not what you're about. You know?
Absolutely.
It's, but you know, it is what it is, and it was what it was. And it was still a great experience. But yeah, like I said, we learned very early on that we do it by our rules. You know, and if things go great, we get that reward. If things don't go so great, then it's on our shoulders, and we can accept that. But we don't want to have those moments because someone else interfered and thought they knew better than the band. You know?
Was All These Things I Hate one of the tracks you did with them? Or no?
I think it was potentially one.
But then you came back into that.
But then we just kind of pulled it and came back.
That song is so incredible. And seeing that one live for the first time, and actually, I maybe have never seen that song live before. That was so
there's a
great.
huge period in the band's kind of touring where it kind of never made the set list.
Really, it was great live.
You know, because you always think you want to play the new stuff, and as the albums progress and years progress, we're on like the next one's going to be number 8 for us or something. So there's a lot of songs to choose from. You know what I mean?
There is.
So, but then we've kind of the last couple of years we've stuck it back in the set, and we've kind of clicked of how important that song is in Bullet's kind of repertoire and for the fans. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's one of the biggest sing-alongs of the night whenever we put that in the set. You know?
That and Tears are my 2 favorite songs of the night.
Yeah. Again, all these things. It's simplicity at its finest, especially for a metal band. You know what I mean? You've got the on the acoustic thing, you know, which is simple, and then the chorus just comes in. good chords, man.
Really cool.
You know what I mean? It's all about that kind of anthem, call and answer vocal.
It's interesting you wrote it over here on 6th fret.
It's weird. Yeah, I don't know why that happened either, but you know, it's one of those things. It's just going with the gears, you know.
Yeah.
Sounded good.
That's cool too.
I think it's good, you know, on the album. I think the reason why we did it, we were just looking for kind of diversity in the song keys and kind of the tone of the guitar, because you're not just chugging on opens or firsts and seconds, you know. It's just, you know, I wish I could tell you more, but
no, that's
it was
so
so
cool.
long ago that I don't remember, but I think it was the fact that it just sounds so punchy the further up you go, you know.
Well, we ended up doing a couple of those as well. Suffocating, Sight, and The Deceived are two ones where I was like, oh, let's just try a different fret for a minute.
Yeah.
And like Deceived, you know, talking about this made me realize more signatures. This 4th fret thing, I usually kind of write very similar riffs in 4th fret for some reason. Like, that was a bullet pattern. It lifts so different.
Yeah, but you got that open drop, which is mine. Songs like Waking the Demon is that 4th fret.
Yeah.
So when the chorus hits,
Yep.
you get that kind of huge release.
Yeah, 024 sounds so good. I think that's the anime key too. All anime themes or openings are in like that step.
Yeah, it's cool. We experiment, like on Screaming Fire as well, we actually did D standard tuning. And that was kind of an eye-opening experience as well, because it kind of brings other styles of playing out of you. Like where you play, the key, the tunings, all helps to kind of reinvigorate kind of creativity, you know?
Definitely, yeah. It's
so
fun.
We've been experimenting with tuning, as you guys, album to album, really, just because it gets a bit stale, same key, same frets, you know, it's just, I don't know, just something can spark something that, you know, you haven't done before just with the way your guitar is tuned, you know?
Definitely.
It's a cool thing to do, especially if you're in the studio and things are getting stale. You're trying to be creative and you're just going over the same old tricks you've done, you know, just tune it different. And all of a sudden, you know, something will come out, you know.
Absolutely, yeah. That's where we started doing 7 strings. So we do 7 standard. We've done like 7 drop, which I think we kind of realized wasn't really for us, the 7 drop. But then, like I've told you, I've got 8s and 9s. Those will never make it to Trivium, unfortunately.
Yeah, we've never experimented with 7 strings. I don't think stylistically or sonically it would suit the band.
Yeah.
You know, I've played on them and they're fun. They're a lot of fun to play, but I just think it's I don't know. It just sounds wrong for both.
Yeah, I love my 8s and 9s. If Paulo says it sounds like a tuba, and it's, so it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
You mentioned Machine Head being one of your biggest influences. Obviously, it's one of our biggest influences as well. Machine Head was the first metal band I saw in the Year of the Dragon tour when I was 12. My dad took me, and I became obsessed with them, and especially when Through the Ashes came out. But that riff from Pull Harder is very Machine Head, and Rob's played and sung this song with us, and I've even told him, like, hey, Rob, this is a very Machine Head riff, because we did this Road Rage tour. It was Machine Head and Chimera co-headlining and us opening across the States and Canada. And that's when we were starting to write a lot of the Ascendancy stuff. Remember, we were writing this song specifically, and he was always really into this track. I decided to throw in this like subtle little difference where instead of going the pattern or it repeats, it actually does one less downstroke on the second riff. So it jumps straight up to that quicker, quicker. So there was also this German band I was listening to briefly called Disbelief. And that's where I got some of the ideas of these big chords that move, like using that almost 28 Days Later sound inside the metalcore. But there was a band called Disbelief is where I first started hearing these. This isn't one of their songs, but it was those kinds of vibes. 28 Days Later thing.
Totally. Yeah, sounds great.
Maybe that ends up being the riff that you sing in the song on.
There we go.
Yeah.
4 Words was written. That's probably the first Bullet song that was ever written.
Really?
As Bullet for my Valentine.
Wow.
Yeah, I still remember kind of coming up with that simple kind of. I mean, it couldn't be more simple, but it just sounded quite iconic.
That is definitely the most iconic.
Yeah,
most
super
iconic riff,
anthemic, super simple. Yeah, and I remember writing that in a rehearsal. Well, it wasn't a rehearsal space. It was an old church in a place called Ogmore Vale, which is where a couple of the boys were from back then. And it was like a local church. And that's where we would go to rehearse and be creative and just do our thing. And that song kind of was born in its, well, as it was back then. And I think the lyrics for me, I kind of had this vision that this was the song that was going to break us through. And it kind of just came to me that I wanted to, should that happen, I wanted the lyrics to kind of mark that moment. And that's where the Look at Me Now comes from. Because like back then, like everyone didn't believe that we would make it. I'm sure you guys had the same. Everyone was putting you down. Everyone was kind of shit talking. Oh, it's just give it up, just get a job, all this stuff. And, I just had this vision and this belief that we were going to make it. And this was the song that was going to be my middle finger to everyone when that happened, So that's where it came from, the lyrics and stuff. And it's the only song as well that it's never gotten backlash for it. But I don't know if anyone's ever noticed it, but it only has one verse. And it's just repeated.
Oh, yeah.
The lyrics don't change.
I feel like that's that era, like a lot of bands, we did quite a bit of that. Like Flies, Deceived, several songs.
Right, okay.
So I started seeing some metalcore bands doing that, like American metalcore bands. I was like, I like that. So it's easier to remember.
Yeah, it was just kind of, I don't know why I didn't bother doing like a verse 2, but I think it was that kind of wanting to drill home the sentiment of the song. And and who doesn't love pinch harmonics, right?
Yeah.
So kind of we just wanted to make something simple. Again, it's one of those things that doesn't work. It goes from this big kind of anthemic thing to and that's as complicated as it gets,
It's great.
And then what's the chorus go? It's simple. It's all about the vocal melody. Yeah. There's some stuff going on underneath it. I can't remember what it is, but it's kind of that kind of stuff going on underneath, just to kind of make it sound a bit more kind of complicated than it is, to try and mask the simplicity. Again, it's one of those kind of songs that has never left the set list since. It's weird, they're so simple and it's a bit of a quirky structure and there's only one verse. But all of that never really seemed to matter with the people that listened to it.
Oh, no,
just
definitely.
loved it,
I think we've got a bunch of songs with the one verse thing, like a
right,
lot.
Okay.
I said the first time I ever saw that done was on The Lab Are Just Breathing. I was like, oh, weird, or a lot of these verses are the same verses. This is cool, I can remember this easier now. So I think we've done that probably 5 to 10 songs throughout the history now.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of newer ones we've done it, but In Waves is essentially just constant repeating. But Flies, Deceived, Blinding Tears, those are all the same verse every time.
There you go. I've never even noticed that.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's a good thing. Yeah.
Man.
It's easier to remember. That's why when you were talking to me in Orlando about guesting a song, I was like, I'll do this one. But then I'm very happy we did Tears.
Yeah. No,
that song.
It was a good choice.
Yeah.
It was a good choice. So, kind of spooky, simple, dissonant, and over a big old open sea with some cymbal swells, it just sounds super evil, super intense. Feels like something's about to happen. And it's just a song, like I said, that has stood the test of time for us. It's a Bullet fan favorite, and it's never left the set list since people heard it the first time back in 2005.
And I love the messaging too. That's what we've always tried to do in our the record titles. Ascendancy meaning this is the plan, we're going to rise. And the crusade, this is our crusade of the band. We have to keep fighting, and each record has been that. The latest couple, I'm not sure if they've really done that as much, but I like that.
Yeah, it's good. That again, I don't know why. I guess it was confidence, it was self-belief, it was that kind of that young, fiery Matt that used to be in there. That I just had the faith and this belief that the band was going to make it. And to all the naysayers, this one's for you.
That's great. I love it. I love it. No, I love it. I love that we had these high ambitions and high goals, because at that time, for us at least, it was very scorned. Like, we were able to talk about it and people liked it for a minute, some of the press people that were into us. But as soon as the next record came out, they're like, oh yeah, this is that cocky, arrogant bunch of 18-year-olds from Florida they're done.
Yeah.
But nowadays, if people come out saying, we're going to be the biggest band in the world, or I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, no matter what age, I feel like 18 through 24, these new people that are popping out, people worship it and they love it. Where it was the high goals that we would set earlier were something that was frowned upon. And now I feel like it's so much easier to be a band, because like some of the earlier tours we do, getting bottles thrown at us, booed at, bullied online, bullied in person, and that doesn't happen anymore to bands. I feel like that is non-existent now, which great. I don't want people to go through that. I'm not saying they have to, but I feel like we had to.
Yeah, we got a fair share of love and shit back in the day, for sure. And some of it was brutal.
Yeah.
But again, I think it was for me personally. I kind of like those two ends of the spectrum. I love the adulation. I love the hate.
It shapes us.
Both to me were just as entertaining and as funny as each other.
It shaped us all, and I would never take it from us. But it's interesting that it's so much easier now.
Yeah, it seems that way. Maybe it seems that way. Maybe it's not. But 20 years into a career, I think you can kind of just go on your own journey now, and you don't have to worry about that shit.
Exactly.
Which is something I'm really comfortable with now, and I have been for a long time. I would take the criticism not super bad, but I would definitely pay attention to it. I think, but I guess that was being a lot younger and having this experience of this kind of unrelenting. They're the next metal gods, like we both had it exactly at the same time. And then the next one, like, oh, it's garbage and blah, blah, blah. It's like, all right, well, which one is it?
Yeah.
But you soon get to realize how things work. And then, for us, we just kind of locked ourselves into our own world and just shut everything off, shut off the noise. And, I think that's been a big part in having a career.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Not listening to that nonsense.
Absolutely. And that's
the
why
good and the bad, both of it equally is just like, I'm not interested,
And that's another parallel between our two bands. I've always felt that both of us, in a good way, didn't fit into specific movements with a bunch of other bands. Like anytime people have talked about the two of our bands, they've always said, yeah, they're modern metal bands, they're awesome, but there's not a group we came up with. I remember the new wave of American heavy metal, we were way too late for that. And you'll see these like movements pick up. And the way that you said that you all had to look inward and go inward because of just essentially necessity for us as well, survival. And that's what made the four of us in our band so strong, and I believe the four of you guys as well.
Yeah.
And that's why the two of us are so similar. And I like that a lot.
Absolutely.